started. So right now what we're looking at here is the Sage 300 desktop for version 2018. So as you can see, they've redone, and the icons will look a little different. Everything looks a little more modern and so on. But essentially the functionality is the same. As far as where do I go to enter an AR transaction, that's going to be the same, but there's going to be some additional features that hopefully you guys will find useful. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hit the setup icons, because the setup determines how the whole product works, how the module is going to work. So we're just going to go over under setup options. Of course, the company address information that shows up, that comes from your common services. And then if you have a different contact for AR, you can certainly put that in there. Processing.
Are y'all looking at a screen, or how do I get into the presentation that you're?
There's a link that if you click on your computer.
I can forward it to you.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that. I'm on the GoToMeeting join 286 whatever, and then it's go to opener application.
Yes, yes.
Which is not doing anything.
Okay, so we're looking at the AR setup options, and on the processing tab, this determines, you know, how the system is going to behave. So under processing charges, you've got the option to process recurring charges, okay? So what that would allow you to do is if you have charges that are going to be the same every month for a customer, that will allow you to set that up and schedule it. And then, and I don't know if you guys would really have that, but if you do, that's where you would set that up. Force listing of all batches, what that would do is, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest you check this, but what it would do is before you could post, you would have to physically print the batch. And that could get, you know, I mean, it's good, I guess, to force people to check their work or whatever, but it also can be seriously annoying. Allow edit of imported batches. So an imported batch would be if you pulled something in from Excel or from another product or something, that would, this option would allow you to edit that before you post. Allow edit of external batches. An external batch would be an accounts receivable batch that was created in a program like order entry. And then what would happen is when you send that info to accounts receivable, this option would allow you to edit it if necessary. Retainage accounting is something you won't need because that's for construction companies where you send a customer a bill, but 10% is usually retained until the job is finished. That doesn't apply to you. So credit checks. So if you're using credit limits and accounts receivable, these options, so say you've got a customer with $10,000, sorry, my phone's ringing. Say you've got a customer with $10,000 and they, you know, you're trying to process an invoice for them. And what the credit check will do will look at what they've got outstanding, and then these options allow you to include pending AR transactions. So a pending transaction is an accounts receivable transaction that is in a batch but is not yet posted. So that might include maybe you've got a cash batch that you've entered for the customer, and you probably want to keep that in. Customer comments, you can set how many days you want to retain them. And then if you've got default days for follow-up, and if you have multiple comment types, which hasn't been set up in the sample data, you can set that up too. So you could have comment types that would include things like collection calls or, other things, just whatever you might want to store as a customer comment. The next section talks about how you retain statistics. And of course, you want to keep statistics. That stores things like your year-to-date and month-to-date, sales, invoices, payments, adjustments, credit notes, and so on. And then this option allows you to edit. Does someone have a question? Okay, I see Leslie's now viewing my screen. That's good. And the salesperson statistics, the same kind of things, whether you want to maintain statistics for your salespeople if you're using salespersons. That's pretty much you'd want to keep all these things checked. Transaction options, so you've got two kinds of invoices that you can do in accounts receivable. One is items, where you've got item codes and you're selling X number of items, and you want more detailed information. The other is just a summary. So we'll look at both of those type when we look at entering an invoice and determine which is going to make sense for you. Default posting date. So in Sage, you've got a posting date and you've got a document date. So the posting date determines what period it's going to hit in the general ledger. So if you're at the end of a month and you've got an invoice that's dated, this really comes more into play in accounts payable, where you get maybe a vendor invoice that's dated April 29th, but you don't get it till May 5th and you've already closed the GL. So that's where you might have a different posting date versus a document date. Typically, people want to default the posting date to the document date, and then you would just determine whether you wanted to override that or what. And then these are a few other item selections, such as, do you want to use the item comment as your default? You want to allow printing of invoices. I can't imagine why you wouldn't. Allow edit of invoice after printed. Yes, again, can't imagine why you wouldn't want to be able to do that. Receipt options, this will be a little more familiar to you because you've used that piece, but you've got 5 types of receipt types. So a receipt is going to be where you're applying payment against an invoice in accounts receivable. A prepayment is just that, where you're getting money for an invoice that has not yet been entered. Unapplied cash would be where you've gotten a check from a customer and you have no idea what it's for, so you're just going to enter it and then you'll apply it later. Applied document is where you can apply a prepayment or unapplied cash. And then miscellaneous receipt is where you're receiving money either from a customer or for a non-customer, and you haven't entered, and you don't have an invoice entered, and you're not going to enter an invoice, so you'll hit a revenue account directly. And then these are your default payment codes. So payment codes that you can have. Typically, you're getting checks, although some people now are getting wires and things like that. But this is where you would determine what the one you use the most is going to be, which is probably going to be check. And this is your default bank account for accounts receivable receipts. So you don't have to type it in every time. Once again, for receipts, you can choose your default posting date, which would be your document date in most cases, and include pending transactions. Once again, pending transactions are items that are entered into a batch in AR but not yet posted, right? And then a few more things. Do you want to force printing of a deposit slip? Because you can print deposit slips out of AR to take to the bank. Create deposit slip when receipt batch is created, and so on. So these are some other edit options. Refund options, you can print checks right out of accounts receivable if it's for a customer refund. And what that eliminates is having to print the check out of accounts payable and posting it to a clearing account and then doing a credit note in AR, so you can actually print it directly out of accounts receivable now. And these are your numbering options. So the length of your invoice number, debit note, credit note, etc. field. The default is 22. I personally think that's ridiculously long. So I usually make them like 15. I'll just do that for a couple of them. You'll see how that works. And this is just informational. The next invoice batch is 38. The next receipt batch is 38, etc. Statement options, so you can have multiple dunning notices if you're sending statements to customers. So these would print at the bottom of your customer, of your statement, and they would be customizable by you, okay? And then, of course, the retainage tab you won't have because you're not a construction company and you're not using retainage, okay? So those are your basic options. So the next option, next AR setup is account sets. And this is where you define your accounts receivable accounting flow basically from AR. So you need to have at least one, but you can have as many as you want. So for instance, trade accounts receivable, this shows the general ledger account that goes to that is used for trade accounts receivable, for discounts, prepayment liability, write-offs, and then you don't have retainage. So this is where you set the GL accounts, and that's going to determine what the other side of all your entries are going to be in accounts receivable. Billing cycles, once again, you have to at least have one, but you can have as many as you want. And billing cycles are just a way to kind of differentiate your customers. Most people just have one, but again, it's really up to you. Just because this says bi-monthly doesn't mean you can only bill bi-monthly, And then this would be where you would put your remittance address, okay, for where your checks are supposed to come. So if you have different remittance addresses for different kinds of billing, then that would be a place where you might have multiple billing cycles, okay. Distribution codes are optional. What they are is they're shortcuts for general ledger distributions. So in this example, we've got commercial sales. It shows us our revenue and inventory and cost of goods sold. Again, they are optional, okay. Dunning messages, we looked at that in options. And this is where you can have different dunning messages depending on your customers. You might have different verbiage you want, You have to have at least one, but you don't have to have any more than one, okay. Interest profiles. So are you guys charging interest on overdue items?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. So this is where you would set up your different interest profiles. So you would, of course, define an interest income account, and then your options, if an account is 15 days overdue or however many days you specify, whether you want to round up to the minimum, and here's the minimum, and whether you want to compound the interest, and then what the annual interest rate is. So you can have, again, you can have as many of these profiles as you need. So if you have different contracts with different customers, you can set that up. Payment codes, these are where we make. Go ahead.
The claim, I gave all this. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that clear? Okay. So the next, did someone have a question?
No, I'm sorry. Somebody came into my office. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I just don't want to ignore if you have a question. All right. So AR payment codes, this is where you define your different kinds of payment codes for your customers. So if some of them do a wire transfer, you could set that up, or an ACH, etc. So that you just define these here. You have to, again, you have to have at least one, but you can also have multiples. Salespersons, if you're tracking sales by salespersons, this is where you would set that up. So you would give them a salesperson ID. If you want to do commissions, you know, the commissions is very, very, how do I put this? Kind of a low level, simple. And the reason for that is honestly, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've yet to see two clients do commissions in exactly the same way. So this kind of gives you a starting point. You can have multiple commissions rate. So if you've got a tiered commissions rate, you know, you can do that. So that is how that all works. Terms. So once again, you can have just about any type of terms, payment terms that you can dream up. You can pretty much create that here. So we've got our classic 2% in 10 days net 30. So you've got two things if you have a discount. So the due date type and the discount type. And in this case, it's days from the invoice date versus end of next month, day of next month, and, you know, other options. So in this case, payment number 1, it's a single payment term, and percent due is 100% in 30 days, but if they pay in 10 days, they can get 2%. So that's how that works. If you've got a COD, you would simply say 100% is due in 0 days, okay? This is a kind of crazy due date table, which I've never actually seen anyone use, but I think some do. Whereas if the invoice date is between the 1st and the 10th, it would be due on the 15th, you know, and so on. So that's how a due date table works. Net 30 days, simply single payment, percent due is 100% in 30 days, 0 discount. If you've got someone who you're giving multiple payments, for instance, this example is 3 payments. The half is due in 30 days, 30% is due in 60 days, and the remaining 20% is due in 90 days. And the advantage of this is that it'll all age appropriately. So when you get past 30 days, if you didn't have this due date table set up, it would show that balance as overdue. So that causes it to age appropriately. Any questions on terms? All right. So the next thing. Oh, go ahead.
Can you have different terms for different customers, or does this set it up for the whole portfolio?
You can have different terms for different customers. So when we talk about customer groups, you'll set a default terms code, but that can be overridden at the customer level, and I'll show you that when we get into customers. So you can have an unlimited number of terms, and you can assign, you know, you can assign different terms to different customers based on whatever agreement you've come up with that customer. So it makes it's very flexible. All right, so if you're tracking item numbers, which I don't know if you are, but if you were to do so, you would set them up here. So what, for instance, we've got here a cable, okay? So here's the description, and then you tell the system what is the unit of measure. It can be each, it can be, in this example, it's by feet. And the example of me, you know, my company, it's usually hours. So whatever, you know, whatever unit of measure you want to define, you can, and then you define the item price here, okay? So that's how to set up items. And of course, you tell the system what general ledger code, you know, you're going to be using for that item.
Is there a limit on the number of items you can have?
No, there is not. There is not. Yeah, I know you do.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing is comments. So comment types, you can have, this is, I think, kind of a new feature, but comment types you can set up. So you could, maybe we could call one collection calls, so that's collection calls. One is maybe ship, so shipping, I'm just making stuff up here. Preference, you know, maybe they like UPS or whatever. You know, and really pretty much, oh gosh, can't you hear me?
I can hear you
Looks
just fine.
Okay, David, guess, can you hear me? It looks like he's lost audio. A message just popped up. Technology. So let me ping everybody. So David, not David Guess, you can hear me. Renee,
Yep.
Renee, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay, and Leslie. So I think David's
Yep.
the other one. Okay. Looks like, well, we'll keep going and hopefully he'll resolve the audio. So anyway, these are just comment types that you can add, and they're completely customizable, and it's based on, you know, what kind of comments and things like that that you guys want to store, okay? And I'll show you that when we get to customers. If you're emailing invoices, you can set up some default customer emails that would, for instance, go with an invoice. David, are you back?
We're back.
Okay, good. Yeah, everyone else could hear.
Yeah, I had an incoming call that knocked me off, I think.
Okay. All right. So these are email. So if you guys are going to email invoices or statements or letters, or if you want to email receipts, you can set up some default boilerplate type emails here. Okay. So that's where that's set up. Optional fields. I don't know if you guys have this module, but you'll see it when we get into customers. But optional fields are where you add additional fields to store information that isn't otherwise available in the system. So if there's something, the usual thing that happens is someone will say, you know, I need to store this information for my customers, but there's really no field where I can put that, and that's where an optional field would come in. And I'll show you these when we get there. But you can see in the sample data, they've got a whole lot of optional fields. And in ship to locations, you can have, you know, different optional fields, invoices, etc. So that's basically how that works. And then GL integration works just like the other modules in Sage. You can create GL transactions. Actually, I like it during posting. It can create a new batch. And now, David, just so you know, you can create and automatically have it post to the GL, so you don't have to go in and post them manually. I don't remember if your version had that yet, but at some point that was added. I can't remember when because it's been a while. And then consolidate. Don't ever consolidate, because then you lose your detail. You lose the ability to drill down, and there's just no reason, in my opinion, to do it. And then, of course, this crazy grid is what determines what gets sent to the general ledger field. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but David, guess if you want to go over this with me. It's the same as AP. I'm not going to bore everybody with all this, and you know. But that determines what's going to land in the GL reference and description fields and the batch headers and so on. So it's important to customize that, you know, how you want it. So next we're going to go right into customers. And the first thing you have to do is you have to create customer groups. Okay, so once again, you have to at least have one, but you can have as many as you want. So you can see there's a number of customer groups here. And so, for instance, employees or retail, and I think wholesale is the other one. And in the customer groups, you're just setting certain defaults. And it's also another way to sort of slice and dice your customer list, so you can do certain reports by group and so on. So we'll just take a look at the wholesale group as an example. So the account type is open item. I always recommend open item versus balance forward, because balance forward, it's kind of like your Visa card where you'll only see the details for the current month, but then it'll have like a balance forward. And most people prefer to see exactly what's open rather than just a big lump sum. Account set, that determines which accounts receivable, control account these transactions hit for this customer group. And then this is where you set your default terms. And once again, we've got multiple terms, okay? And you can have different ones. And then your billing cycle, and then if they've got an interest profile, you would set that up here. You can set an overall credit limit if you want. And you can set a default salesperson if you want. You'll notice that this one doesn't have one, and usually you don't really set defaults by a whole customer group. You know, you would set that kind of one-off. And then in this example, we've got some optional fields assigned to the customer group, and that's where that would land. And then, of course, statistics. The sample data is dated 2020. So let me go to
Carol, is there a way to batch input the data? I mean, so if we have 5,000 customers to set up?
There is a very easy way to import that information. So if you've got it in Excel, is that what you're asking? Do you have your customer list in another system, or?
Yes, we currently have our customer list in a different system.
Okay, so what we can do is, if we can get that out in either Excel or comma separated values, I can help you get it into the format that Sage will recommend, that Sage will recognize, and then you can import them in. So yes, that way you don't have to type.
Is it relatively the same as importing general ledger batches or AP customers and stuff like that?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, it's just like, I'll show that to you. I'll export, and then I'll show that to you. But yeah, it's very easy. I mean, just like anything, you have to have the right file layout, and you know how general ledger is very particular.
Right.
Same as customers, it's got to be, the right thing. But yeah, it's very easy. And actually, let me just take a look. Sage now provides people, and this is really great in my opinion, and high time, but they now include file layouts for import. So this is my Sage 300 install. So here we got some import customers. Yeah, so here's a file layout for an AR customer. So you could actually start building that. I'll just open it up so you can see. It's going to look very similar. Okay, so here you go. So these are the minimum fields required, and this is just a sample. So the customer number, the customer name, the customer group, and I can send you what all these fields mean, the address fields. So yeah, and then your account set and so on. You could populate that information, and then we can get that imported for you. And I can send you guys this file, and you can start working on that. So anyway, moving on to, I'm going to skip national accounts for the moment, but I'll come back to it. Again, I don't know if you own that module, but I'll tell you what that is in a minute. So here's your customer screen. So we're going to look at one of our customers here. So just like any just like your Sage vendors, you've got your information, your address information, not really complicated. Here's where you enter your customer group. Once again, that is required. And the group sets certain defaults. So here's your contact information and then your processing. So your customer group is going to assign your customer to an account set. It's going to assign default terms, billing cycle, and interest profile. And again, these can be edited. So here's this customer's terms, but this customer, I'm going to let them have a 2% discount. So you can see it's very easy to change that as needed, okay? And invoicing information, so these again are some defaults. So we've got some salesperson added here and their commission split. And if you guys were using the inventory module, you could specify what warehouse location you usually ship to from that for that customer. But if you're not, it really, you notice this is blank, and that's fine. If you've got different ship via options defined, you can choose one here, okay? This is where you would assign what tax profile they have. Most of your people are probably wholesale, so you probably won't have tax. And then if you want to assign optional fields, you can do so here. And then statistics are just accumulated. So if we go to 2020, we can look and see period 5, here's what we've done. This is the business we've done in period 5 for this customer, okay? And then again, activity is statistical, outstanding balance, highest balance, etc. And then comments, here are your comments, and then here are your notes. So the notes is a new module that allows you to have notes that pop up anytime you pull up this customer. So that could be kind of useful. If you guys have migrated to the 300C version, which is the subscription version, you will get notes for free. So, David, you'll probably know that, or you might or might not. You can talk to Michael about that. So that is customers. Any question on basic customer setup?
How many digits can the customer number be? Is there a limit?
I think 15, but let's just check. So I'm going to create
set back and set up.
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 12 characters. And then the customer name, that can be, I think that's like 60 or 70, it can be, it's pretty long. Okay.
What if you have a customer that has multiple locations or
Okay, so multiple locations. So there's a couple ways to address that, okay? And it depends, let's see, so I'm not going to add that. So you've got a couple ways to do this. The first is ship to locations. So for customer 1105, you can see you've got multiple ship to locations, and these are unlimited. So the billing location is what you enter in the customer itself, but then the ship to locations, you can build that. So if I open this East location, you can see you've got a name, address, contact information, invoicing information, and that even includes tax info. So if you've got a ship to location in another state and you have to charge them tax, you can add that tax profile as well, okay? So that's ship to locations. The other option is national accounts. So what a national account does is, say you sell to Target, just as an example, and you have multiple locations, multiple billing locations. So you've got maybe 10 Target stores that you're sending products to, but you get one, so, and you have to, maintain an aging separately and all that kind of thing. But when you get a check, it comes from headquarters and it covers all of those. So the old way of doing things would be that you would have to enter, you'd have to take that check, split it, and say, okay, this amount goes to this customer, this amount goes to that customer, and so on. But what national accounts allows you to do is, for instance, in this example, Bargain Mart, okay, Bargain Mart stores, you might have 5 customers that are a member of this national account, and then when you receive a check, you just type in Bar Mart, and then it lists all the outstanding invoices for those 5 customers. So that's national accounts. So ship to locations is one thing, and then national accounts has to do more with how you get paid. So that's how that works. So if we look at, let's find the Bargain Mart customer. So if we look at, so here's a Bargain Mart, and you can see Bargain Mart is part of this national account, and then this 1105 is also part of this national account. So they're basically members of one overall grouping. Okay. So is that clear to you guys? All right. Okay, so that covers everything with setup of customers. So now let's look at customer inquiry. So we're going to look at customer inquiry. And you can see this is a pretty big screen. So if I look at Bargain Mart, for instance, this is going to show me all my tabs that are on my customer maintenance function, as well as outstanding invoices and everything else. So of course this is just my address information, my customer profile, account group, all that, address, tax info, credit status, any comments that you have for that customer, optional fields, ship to locations if you've got any, statistics, and now we get into the interesting part, and that would be documents. I'm going to maximize this field. So this shows me all of my outstanding documents for this customer. So I can see the document was, this one for instance, was $974. They've paid $690, and this is the current balance. And I'm highlighting this one, and then down here it shows information. So right here it shows the $690 apply. So you could tell by looking at this whether it was a credit note that was applied or whether it was a payment or what. It shows you, the document number, the purchase order number, and let's just scroll over. Posting date, year, period. Here's the PO number, order number, shipment number. So order and shipment number, that would be if you were using order entry, okay? And then if you want to rearrange these fields, just like everything else in Sage, you can just grab the column, and move it over. Also, if you guys are not, for instance, using order entry and some of these fields are not really relevant, you can go into your settings and you can disable certain tabs. So let's say I don't want to see order entry because I'm not using it. And now I hit close and it kind of cleans things up. So it's only showing what you want. Okay. I'm going to reset that though.
Carol, if we do import invoices from, say, our order entry system, Magic or Flag, can we have it populate the order number?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Yeah, and when we enter an invoice, you'll see, that that's just a text field that you can enter, whatever you need. Customer list. So I think this is actually a new, so select by customer number. Let's just say I want 1100 to 1105. And then I'm just gonna, so these are just all sorts of ways you could slice and dice your customer. So I'm just gonna process that. And so here it is. It's just showing me this list, and then you can print it. Okay. So if I want to see all customer groups, status, so basically this is a new icon. So it allows you to create a customer list based on certain criteria that you specify here. So it's a quick kind of lookup thing, which is kind of cool. So that's that. So that's everything in the customer group. Okay. Okay, so I guess we should go into transactions next. So these are all your kinds of transactions you can have in AR. So of course there's invoices, receipts, which you're familiar with, quick receipt entry, adjustments, refunds, and then document inquiry. So we'll just go to the invoice batch list. I always like working from the batch list because it shows me everything that's out. So if I uncheck show posted and deleted, so I can see here that I've got some order entry things that have come in from the Sage order entry system. I'm just going to create a new document. So we'll use our Bargain Mart customer, ship to location. They don't have any specified, but if you're entering an invoice and you want to add a ship to location on the fly, you can just hit the plus, and we could call this VA location, and we'll just make it and then whatever Route 29, I don't know. And then Charlottesville, VA, whatever, and that gets what I need, I think. That's fine. So you can add a ship to on the fly, okay? You can also add a customer on the fly for that matter. I could click new and it would bring up the customer field. I could add it, and then that would allow me to add a customer, you know, as needed. So if you've got a PO, you can put it in here. And if you've got your order number, you could, whatever. Okay, shipment number, that's optional. If you have a number, you can put it in there. So you can see we've got the two kinds of invoices. We've got the item and we've got the summary. So we'll show you an example of both. So the item number, we're going to choose from the AR item list here. So we'll use this one here. And you can see it looks pretty normal where you've got a quantity, a unit price, and an extended price. Okay, so that's how to do an item style. All right. I'll just make up an invoice number here. All right, and now we'll do a summary. This phone is driving me crazy. I don't know how to turn it off when it's ringing. Anyway, okay, so a summary style invoice is going to look like this. And so instead of seeing the items, now you see your distribution codes, your revenue account, and so on. So we would just say, I don't know, lawn chair. And then the revenue account, we'll just use this one, and we'll just say $300. So this is where you're just putting in the item and the description and the revenue account. We can just say patio, table. We'll do an expensive one. And now I'll hit add. All right, so this is driving me nuts. Okay. All right, so now what do they look like when you print them? So if I print this invoice, and this of course is the default accounts receivable invoice that comes with Sage, which can be customized. So here's an item style invoice. Okay, so it shows you your item number, your description, the quantity, unit of measure, unit price, extended amount. Here's the terms here. Some people like to remove this discount info. We can do that. And then down here you've got tax information if the system is calculating tax, which yours probably won't because you're a wholesaler. So now let's take a look at the summary invoice. And again, so do you guys send invoices from your order entry system, or how does that work?
Currently we do, yeah.
Okay. So are you going to be sending invoices from accounts receivable now, or are you going to send it from your existing order entry and then pull in the balances and use that for your cash receipts and customer agings and all that?
Not
Do you know
sure yet.
Okay. Okay. So, you know,
I think that's part of what we're trying to understand and figure out is
trying to figure out. Okay. Yeah, so we can set up, you know, to import invoices. Another thing you might want to think about doing if you're going to maintain your current order entry system, you might want to talk to our programmer, Henry, about building a routine that pulls that information from your order entry system into Sage Accounts Receivable. So you're not having to manually import every time. So that would be something that you might want to think about. And I don't know if you're thinking about looking at the Sage order entry, but you know that's another option, of course, too. You know, I mean, whichever. We have clients that have in-house systems because of what industry they're in. Like we've got a lot of pharmaceutical distribution. And there's a company or a product called Frameworks that handles all that, but then we pull all that stuff into AR, and they've built pieces that, little routines that take it from the one system to the other, and it's cleaner and easier, and so that'd be something to consider. But anyway, that's what the two styles, excuse me, of invoices look like when you print them. And then, of course, that's pretty straightforward. Now, something that's new in Sage 300, I think it came out in 2016. So you'll get this when you upgrade. As you can see now, you've got a Post All button here on your batch list, and that's in AP, AR, GL. What the Post All button would do is it would post everything that's set ready to post. Another thing that's new in these versions is that within this batch, okay, you can just post it right here. So I can click post, and it's telling me it's not set ready to post. Do you want to do it? And I'll say yes. And so that's kind of nice. You don't have to exit and post and all that. So now you can see that this batch is now posted. Okay, if I open it up, so now you can see that it's posted. So that's a new thing in AR, or in all the programs. So receipt entry, I think you guys are probably pretty familiar with that, but we'll just review it quickly. So again, you've got the 4 kinds of receipts. So we're going to use 1100 again. I'm going to click on this little go button because this is going to list everything that's outstanding here. So what you do is you enter the customer number. You can put a reference, any kind of description you want. It's optional. You tell the system what type of payment it is. In this case, it's going to be a check. You put in the check number, and you put in the amount. Okay. And I'm just going to pay this invoice here. Okay. And then I'm just using the space bar to toggle back and forth. Now, if you want to, let's say that we're paying, let's just do this. We're going to say $2,000, and we're going to pay part of this invoice here, this $97 one, $95 one. So you can see now that there's a balance left after we, up to $8.37. So if you want to, if you say, you're just going to write that off or whatever, you can click on adjust and just say write off whatever. And then you choose your GL account. And well, how much was that? $8.37. So we're just going to debit sales for $8.37. And it shows me that I'm reducing AR by $8.37. And now you can see we've adjusted that amount out. Okay. So you can do an adjustment within the cash receipts. It's a company profile option that you turn on or turn off. So if you need to do that, you can. All right, so that's a receipt. The other type of receipt is to pay something that a customer owes you that's in AR, okay? So the next thing we're going to look at is a prepayment. So we'll use the same customer. And you'll notice that there aren't any document numbers listed here because it's a prepayment. So we'll just say $250. And we're not applying it to anything. We're just going to have it as a prepayment. And then we can actually apply that later. I'll show you that in a minute. The next one, of course, is a miscellaneous receipt, and that's just hitting revenue directly. So this can either be for a customer or not. So supposing you got a refund from Verizon or something, then at that point you would leave the customer blank and just say Verizon, refund, for whatever reason. And we're just going to give $100, and we'll use an account number, whatever. We'll use $100. Okay. This invoice number already exists. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so that is a miscellaneous payment. So a miscellaneous payment, in this case, it's going to bypass the customer. It's going right to revenues. You can also have a miscellaneous for a customer, miscellaneous payment for a customer, and it would just put it in as an invoice and a payment at the same time. So I'm going to post this batch. Okay. And now I'm going to create a new batch. And I'm going to apply that document. So prepayment. So we're going to apply a document. So what document am I applying? So I'm going to use the Finder, and here's my prepayment that I created earlier for $250. So I'm going to choose that, and then I'm going to click this button here. It's going to list all my outstanding invoices, and then I'm just going to say I'm going to apply it to this one right here. Okay, so that's how apply document works. Okay. And then I can go ahead and post that as well if I want. So that's pretty much all the scenarios of cash receipts, kind of quickly. Is that clear to you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so the other thing I forgot to mention in invoice entry is you can also have credit notes. So I'll do a credit note, because sometimes that happens. Okay, so we're going to use the same customer, and I'm going to do the invoice type as a credit note. So, of course, there's an invoice. We know what that is. A debit note increases the balance of an invoice, and a credit note decreases, of course. So once I choose credit note, you'll see a field pop up called Apply to Document. So what am I actually crediting? I'm going to choose a document here. Make this bigger. Let's choose this one. Okay. And so, I can put a PO number and an order number, any kind of information I want, in here. And then we'll choose an item number. I'm going to refund for one cable. Maybe I'll do 10. And that's basically that. So add. And then I can post the credit note, and it's going to reduce the balance of this invoice number 10. Okay. So the main thing with a credit note is you want to make sure you always choose the Apply to document, and the best thing to do is always to use the Finder, because the Finder allows you to make sure you get the right document and you typed in the right number of zeros, because if I don't type this exactly right, it's going to basically not apply to anything. And then what you would do, if you had a credit note and then you never applied it to anything, you could go into a cash batch and use Apply Document to apply that credit note. So it's not the end of the world, but it is an extra step. So that's a good thing to remember. So we can go ahead and post that. Okay. All right. So we've talked about receipts. We've talked about invoices. We can do a receipt inquiry. So what this allows you to do, and this is also, by the way, available in accounts payable as a check inquiry. But what it allows you to do is look up a check for a deposit from a customer. So if you don't know what bank, you don't have to choose it. But let's just say I want to look up checks from Bargain Mart because they're saying they paid, and okay, and then all right, and then I can give a date range if I want, or I'm just going to leave all these as they are, and I'm going to hit go, and so now I can see all the payments from this customer. Okay, so we've got, here's the check number, here's the amount. And if I click on document here at the bottom, it's going to open up that document, and it's going to show what it was applied against. In this example, it was just a prepayment. So this one, if I hit document, it's going to show what that check paid. Okay, so it paid these two items, and it shows that there was an adjustment on this item. Okay, so that's receipt inquiry. And once again, that's available. If any of you guys do AP, it's available as a payment inquiry accounts payable. So, all right. Quick receipt entry. So this allows you to quickly enter a receipt. So we're going to create a new batch, deposit 5918, and it's going to be a receipt. Customer number 1100. It's a check. The check number, receipt date, posting date. Maximize the screen. Okay. Document number. So honestly, yeah, it's not letting me pull up a document number. I don't honestly know why you would use this, simply because generally you're going to want to be able to apply it to your customers or your customer specific invoices. But, there it is for what it's worth. Adjustments, typically people do typically people do credit notes instead of adjustments because they can be a little confusing. But adjustment is exactly what it says. Adjustment is adjusting something that's been entered in AR. So if I want to, once again, go to customer 1100, what am I adjusting? I'm adjusting this document here. Okay, I'll make the date work. Okay, and so let's get a document number here. And so then you choose your general ledger account, give a reference, a description if you like, and then enter, whether you're increasing or decreasing receivables. And what is nice about this screen is it does tell you what's happening in accounts receivable. Okay, so it's telling me I've debited this account, so it's crediting accounts receivable. So as long as you make sure you keep your eye on that, because older versions of different accounting softwares didn't have this, and people would make an adjustment and they'd get it going the wrong way and stuff like that. It was very easy, to do that, and then you mean to increase it by $100 and you end up decreasing, and then you end up with 20 things. It was a mess. But as long as you keep your eye on receivables adjustment total, you'll know that this is a credit and you're good to go. So that is adjustments. So I'll go ahead and post that. All right, refunds. So if you have to process a return for a customer and you're refunding the money, or if they paid you twice or just whatever reason, you can create a refund in accounts receivable. And I don't know, if the older version has this, but it's been out for a while and it's helpful. So I'm going to create a customer, and I'm going to do a check payment. Okay, I'm going to print the check. Okay, I'm checking this print check thing here. And so now we're going to process the refund. Okay, so I'm going to choose the document that I'm refunding. So it's only going to give you the option to refund things that have a credit balance, which makes sense, you know. So I'm going to refund this $76. Okay. I have to. Okay, so let me try this again. Remember, the sample data is in 2020, so you know you have. Okay, hold on a sec. Okay, so then I'm going to do original amount, current amount, and payment amount. So 78.60. All right, so that's how you do a refund. So you choose the customer. You choose whether it's going to be a check. If it is, you want to check the print check if you're printing the check. Otherwise, if it's a manual check, you would just put the manual check number, okay? And then you choose the document you're refunding, okay? And the amount, and then you put in the payment amount in this column here, okay? And then you hit add. And now once you've done that, it looks very much like an AP batch where you hit print post. And those of you who are familiar with AP are familiar with this screen. So you need to choose an AR check, of course. And then I'm just going to print it to the screen. This would print your check, okay? So there's the payee and the invoice that you're crediting or refunding, and so on. And I'm not going to say yes. I'll close that. So that's refunds. Once again, there's a refund inquiry available. So we'll do, we won't specify, but you could specify for customer. And then here it is. It shows it that it was a check from this bank, check number, GL account, customer number, etc., refund number, and it also tells you if the check's outstanding in your bank rec. So that's how that all works. The post batches icon, usually people now post either from their batch entry screen or from their batch list. But what this would do is it would post any batch, which depending on what you choose, invoice, receipt, adjustment, refund, that is set ready to post. So if it's not set ready to post, it's not going to post. Okay, document inquiry. So once again, we can look up an AR document and you can read info about it, the customer number, the national account, header information, so the document total, current balance, ship to info, taxes, salesperson, optional fields, details would be what item numbers or GL were hit, and then transactions. And from here, you can also print the AR invoice, which is kind of nifty. So if you've got somebody in your company who needs to look things up, but you don't want them really necessarily to be entering and editing batches, you can give them access to this feature and they can go and reprint invoices or do whatever they need to do, depending on how you do your separation of duties, All right, so that's basically all the functions. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a quick peek at setup reports. So this is just reports of what you've set up in your setup. So for instance, terms, it's just going to list all your terms that you've created. So setup reports, probably not something you're going to print a lot, maybe in the beginning so you can review them and make sure you've gotten them all, but there they are. I don't think we need to go on through everything, but that's your setup reports. Transaction reports are a little more interesting. Your batch listing, of course, lists open batches in AR or posted or whatever. So you can print them from here. You can also, of course, print them from your batch list screen, okay? Batch status, if you want to, I'll just show you what this looks like. But batch status, it's just like the other modules, where it's going to give you a list of your your AR batches, what its status is, ready to post, posted, and then some overall information. Posting journals. So posting journal is exactly what it says. So for an invoice posting journal, it's going to list what actually posted to the accounts receivable. So you'd want to know the posting sequence number, and that's going to show you. Sometimes you'll post a batch and maybe there'll be something that's problematic and it'll roll into an error batch. But the posting journal is going to show you exactly what posted. So if I look at an invoice posting journal for one of the batches that we just created, again, those of you familiar with GL and AP and AR receipts. Oh, excellent. Okay, not sure what that's all about. But a posting journal shows you, the GL distribution. Deposit slips, if you're printing out deposit slips, you can print them either at the AR receipt batch or batch list or here, okay? Invoices, once again, you can print them from the batch itself or you can print them here. Hopefully my computer's not going to do something stupid, but okay, so let's see what we get. Okay, so there's your invoice. So that's a place you can print an invoice. In this instance, it's a credit note. Receipts, again, that is where you can print out your receipts. GL transactions, you won't have anything in this report unless you are electing to send information to the GL manually, okay? And I'll show you that in periodic processing. But most people let the AR batch send to and sometimes even post to the GL every time you post an AR. Now, this is an important thing here, posting errors. So what happens is if you post something in accounts receivable and it kicks a transaction out, it'll roll into a posting error batch. And the posting errors can be due to all kinds of things, like maybe the customer was inactive, or maybe somebody made the customer inactive after you entered the invoice, or maybe you're posting to a fiscal period that's locked, or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of options for why you might have a posting journal. So what a lot of people do is well, let me try to post this again, and they keep trying to post the error batch, but it keeps rolling into another error batch because they haven't addressed the issues. So this is where you can find out what the issue is. So posting errors, again, I don't think there are going to be any in sample data, but we'll try. We'll see if there is one. There isn't. But what would happen is it would show you the posting sequence, the batch, and the entry, and then it would tell you why. It might say something like cannot post to closed fiscal period, or customer is inactive, or GL revenue account is inactive, or whatever. And then you could go into the error batch, fix it, and then you could post it. Okay. Customer transactions. So this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of customer transactions for whatever period you specify. You can tell the system which ones you want. You might want fully paid transactions. You might want to sort by type, maybe. And you might want to total by transaction type. So this is just, by the way, Vendors has a report just like this as well. Printing. And it's taking forever. Why is it taking forever? I'm not sure why. Okay, I don't know why it took a while, but here we are. We've got Bargain Mart, and we've got all their transactions for this date range, which was from the beginning of time to the end, basically. And then it gives me a total invoices, debit notes, credit notes. So that's customer transactions. Item sales history, if you want to see if you do decide that you're going to invoice by items, you could do an item sales history printout. So we'll just do that to show you what it looks like. So it just shows quantity sold, sales amount, returns. So that's kind of nice. And then age trial balance, that's going to be the one that's you're going to do every month at least. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose the report type. Typically, people do it by due date, but you could also do it by document date. You could also do an overdue receivables report by document date or due date as well. We'll just do it by due date. I'm going to age as of 5/30/2020, and my cutoff date is going to be 5/30/2020. Now, cutoff by, this is important. Cutoff by, you want to make sure if you're doing this to prove out to the general ledger, you want to choose either posting date or year or period, because the posting date determines when it's going to hit the GL, as does the year period. So if you do it document date and you've done a transaction where the document date was April 30th, but the posting date was May 1st, and then you do it by document date, your GL isn't going to tie out, okay? So that's really important. You can elect to do it by document date, detail sorted by document date, or just by summary. So if you're just looking for a summary to prove to the GL, then that's probably summary, given how many customers you have. It's probably the way you want to go. Customer with zero balance, probably not. Paid transactions, again, probably not. Okay, and then I'm just going to hit print. And here is your aging, eventually. All right, so here it is. It gives you your columns. And then at the very end, it shows you the grand total, and that's what should tie out to the GL, okay? The last thing we're going to chat about is periodic processing. So create GL batch, again, if you're electing to create a general ledger batch automatically every time you post, which most people do, this icon is not anything you're going to use. It will do basically nothing, okay? Create interest batch. So this is where you add interest. So if you're using interest, you could select it by billing cycle, customer number, range, group, national account, etc. So we'll just do billing cycle. We'll do all, and we'll go 05/30/2020. Process. All right. So what this has done is it's created an interest batch, and I think it puts it in adjustments. So let's take a look. I might be wrong though. Adjustment batch. Nope. Okay, that's not it. It must be invoice batch. I always forget this. Okay, yes, it's in the invoice batch. So we'll just take a quick look at it. You can scroll through it and determine, if you want to actually post all of these. Okay, so there it is. It's an interest document type. And once you post it, then you can send your customer statements out. Okay. And I have to show you where to do that as well. Back to periodic processing, retainage batch doesn't apply. If you've got a customer and you know they're never going to pay or whatever, you can create a write-off batch here, and that does create an adjustment batch. So you can say, I want to process all transactions for customer number 1500, and then you give the system a range. So you could say something like minus, $150 through $300, and it'll pick up. If you have like little credits, like maybe a customer paid 10 cents too much or something like that, you can actually create a write-off batch and just get rid of all the negative items by going from minus, whatever amount through 0. And then it'll write off those little overpayments. So that's a way to get rid of those quickly and easily, okay? So you got to be really careful with this, though. I had a client once run this for all customers, and then they never posted it. And then somebody else came in and posted it and wrote off her entire accounts receivable. So, just be cautious when you're using the write-off, because you can actually write off your whole AR and then you'd have to key the whole thing back in, and that would be awful. So just, a little bit of caution. Clear history you won't do for a while, but you can. So if you want to clear comments that are older than a certain amount of time old, or if you want to clear fully paid documents, generally people do this when their database starts getting too big. But another word of caution, once you clear, they're gone forever and there's no getting it back. So, make sure you want to do this before you do it. Same with clear statistics. Honestly, I see no reason to ever clear statistics personally. Year end is optional. Most people just let their batches roll forward. And again, I don't see any reason, really to do this. Deleting inactive records can be useful. So if you've got customers, and you want to delete the inactive customers and national accounts and so on, customers have to have a 0 balance. And before you can delete an inactive customer, you have to clear that customer's history. So if there's any transactions, of course, it's not going to delete them. So you would first go to clear statistics, and then, you'd go to clear history, and that would be fully paid documents, and you choose your customer number, just the one, and then you could delete the inactive records. So it makes you do those extra things, for obvious reasons. Last but not least, customer reports. So of course you can print your customer groups, your customer list, your customer groups. It's pretty self-explanatory, but statements. So once again, you can customize your statement with your logo and whatnot. But if we decide we're going to print a statement for Bargain Mart, which is what we've been using, we're going to cut it off. We're going to age by due date, and I'll just do, and then I'm just going to print. So what happens is each time you run, oh great, okay, so I guess I'll just do all the customers. So let's see if we can get something. Oh, it's because it's 2018, that's why. Okay. So what happens is the computer remembers each time you run statements. So then you can go back and rerun those specific statements, okay? So you can see here's what they look like, here's the aging at the bottom, and here's the dunning notice. Remember, we created those in the beginning. So if they've got over 90 days, they're going to let you know, okay? So that's what the statement looks like, and then you can send those out to your customers and so on. Now, once I say yes to where statements created, printed successfully, it's going to mark that statement run as of 5/31. So I'm going to say yes, and that's basically how that works. You can print labels for customers if you need to, usually for files or whatever. I'm not really sure why you need to do it, but you can if you need to. And that's basically everything in AR. Does anyone have any questions, or do you think, for now you're pretty clear?
I just have a couple of questions. We talked about applying cash to the accounts.
Yep.
I assume that there's a way to import that information too? Because we currently get a download from the bank that we basically upload to our current system, and we
Okay.
would want to be able to use that.
Yeah, so what you're going to need to do, so the tricky bit about that, okay, is when you are importing, the answer is yes, you can do it, but you'll probably need some modification, because the issue is you can pull that all in, but if you're importing a receipt for a customer, okay, then the question becomes, what are you applying it against? And it might be one invoice, it might be 12, and that import is not going to know that information. So one of our programs, or a programmer created a little program that imports cash receipts from another system.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is you assign, pulls in like the check number and the amount, and then you can choose what you're applying kind of as you're importing. So I would
Yeah,
recommend.
the information that comes from the bank, we can't apply it unless it has an invoice number. So if
Oh,
we've
so you've
got
got
that
the.
field, then yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah. I mean, we can work with that. I will tell you that importing cash into AR is kind of a pain in the neck because there are a whole
mhm.
lot of tabs, but anything is doable. And, we might need to get our programmer involved just to do some minor tweaks so it's smoother. But yes, I
Okay.
mean, the bottom line is yes, we can do that.
And then if we're gonna pretty much dump our invoices into this system, um, will we need to have all the items set up in order to see the item detail on the invoices?
Yes, yes, you would need, or you'd need to have, well, you know what, you could just have one item where, or maybe a variety of items, maybe one item code for each revenue account that you're going to be hitting. And
Uh huh.
then you could import the descriptions in, so that way it would like, so if you've got different revenue accounts for different kinds of things that you sell, you
Mhm.
could you could set it up that way. You could, and then it would just import the description. Um,
Yeah, I
and then,
was just thinking in terms of if we're gonna download the information from our current order management system into AR and have the
right,
AR folks here making collection calls and or
right,
calling
you
for
need to
money
know
and
that right.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way where they won't have to be working on dual systems.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, you could do either way. I mean, if you want to set up an item code for each, let's see, where are my items? For each item that you sell,
So we can
um,
do this without having the order management system up
correct.
and running. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Or
yeah,
or inventory, right? We don't have the inventory module or the order entry, but
correct.
yet,
Yeah.
yeah, I would want the
Yes.
same thing where you import that invoice over, but you don't have to toggle between order entry system and AR.
Yeah, so what you would
Yeah.
do is when you import, you could do one of two ways. So option one would be you import your whole item list from your other order entry, your inventory system to Sage, and it would have your descriptions, of course, and it would have your, the revenue account, for what type of item it is, okay? And then when that pulls in, it's going to print that. The other way you could do it is you could use the AR items as categories. So, for instance, I'm just thinking of Plow and Hearth. You sell like peanuts, that might be one, or food items might be one category, and another category might be lawn furniture. Another might be shoes. Another might be gardening equipment, or whatever. So and then when you do the import, what you could do is you could import the description of the from your current invoice to that invoice, and that way you wouldn't have to maintain quite so many. And we, you know, when you get a little closer, we could look at what's going to be the best option for you. I mean, it might be worth it to import that massive list of items, or we might just do it by categories, and then you'd import the descriptive information into AR. So.
Okay.
I think that's key. I think once we get it in, it'll do whatever we need it to do. It's a matter of getting it in, and like Renee said, applying the payments. And I think
right.
When we do that, we're good.
Right. So yeah, so that's that's going to be a discussion for you and Michael, or maybe the three of us, to decide once we get closer what is actually going to be a better option for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We all have my email, I think.
Yep.
So if you have any questions and want to send, like, as a group, so we can further discussion, or if there's something that, you know, we didn't cover and wish we had, that's perfectly fine. I will also upload this, since it's sample data and not confidential, I'll upload this session onto YouTube, and you can revisit it, you know, anytime you want. Okay? All right.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.